Hey, it's John. Welcome back to the show, and welcome back to the latest edition of the Live Cuts. The premise of this series is to talk about live albums that don't get enough love or recognition. Before we get started today, let me introduce my distinguished guest. You no doubt know him from his many appearances on the Contrarians, and this is his return to John the MusicNut, and we're going to talk about a band that we wanted to talk about in the Contrarians, but we couldn't get enough people interested. Matt Thompson, welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you, John. So great to be back talking to you. Really looking forward to it. And yeah, we've got a mutual love of Husker Du, so excited to talk about them.
Yep, we're wearing the shirts today, ladies and gentlemen, and we are going to be talking about Husker Du with The Living End. This album came out on April 7, 1994 on Warner Brothers Records. It was released several years after Husker Du had split up. And by this point, Grant Hart had gone solo and Bob Mould had gone solo, and then he had formed Sugar. Sugar was an active band at this point, and I've already told you two-thirds of the members of the band. Bob Mould on guitar and vocals, Grant Hart on drums and vocals, and Greg Norton on bass and vocals. The shows on this album were recorded in October of 1987 on their last tour for the album Warehouse Songs and Stories. There are 24 tracks on here, nearly 77 minutes of music. This was produced by Lou Giordano, who was their sound man at the time. He would later become a renowned producer, as well as Husker Du themselves. More than half of the shows, or I'm sorry, the songs that were on this album were recorded at Le Spectrum in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. We also have shows from RPM Club in Toronto, Canada, or Toronto, Ontario, Canada, the Living Room in Providence, Rhode Island, the Ritz in New York City, Toad's Place in New Haven, Connecticut, and two shows at the 930 Club in Washington, D.C. Now, Matt, when did you first get acquainted with Husker Du's music?
Yeah, so it was in I was in high school, and it would have been around the time of New Day Rising
Okay.
coming out. So I kind of became aware of SST bands, a few of them and the Minutemen at around the same time. And just from like reading rock magazines, there was the Minutemen had a connection to Blue Oyster Cult, who was and is my favorite band, and so had checked them out a bit earlier on, and then had a friend who was into Husker Du as well, and so that was how I first heard of them, and then as we go into this, I'll talk about sort of my history of seeing the band live. So I did get to see the band live a couple of times. So although the first time I went to see them, so it was my the friend who was also had gotten into the band. We took so this is in Massachusetts. They were playing the Paradise Club in Boston, and this is probably it's probably for a flip probably touring for Flip Your Wig, and so we went in there. We took the train in. It was an all ages show, and we stood in line for a couple hours and had a blast in line because there's other like kids from the suburbs who were into Husker Du. So, and it was a fun bonding experience. But it sold out and we didn't get in. So the first time I went to go see them, I did not see them, which was disappointing. So maybe when we turn into start talking about the warehouse and then the living end, I'll fill in on when I finally did get to see them a couple times. But how did you get first get turned on to them, John?
Later, only knew of them in the 80s because back then I wasn't listening to college radio. And by the time I would have been listening to college radio, Husker Du had already broken up. I knew of Sugar. I remember a couple songs, but I didn't get deep into them either, or Bob Mould's solo stuff. I actually didn't get into them until a little over 20 years ago. And that was when I was had an e-music subscription. And at that point, my brother actually introduced me to e-music because he was into a lot of punk music more than I was. And so I started picking up on bands myself. In the 90s, I loved Meat Puppets. And I discovered them when Too High to Die came out. Well, and then they were on the Nirvana Unplugged special earlier that year, maybe the year before. And I heard Backwater, and I love Backwater. And my friend had a cassette. He had Too High to Die on cassette. Hello, Dave Sitar, if you're watching. And he goes, I don't like this album. You can have it. And that got me into Meat Puppets. So fast forward 10 years, and I'm downloading or buying the downloads to these Meat Puppet CDs, and they always recommend other bands to you. And one of them was Minutemen, and one of them was Husker Du. So that was when I downloaded Zen Arcade.
Oh, nice. Okay, so that's where you started.
So that was when I started,
Yeah.
and I enjoyed it, but not to the point where I went out and bought the rest of the stuff. I For the longest time I only had Zen Arcade and Warehouse Songs and Stories. It would be much later before I would pick up most of the other albums, right? So, but yeah, it would have been e-music probably around 2005 for me. You never heard them on our rock radio stations, particularly WEZX FM, Scranton, Pennsylvania, and the home of rock 101. You never heard them on there. It was interesting because I know in the 80s they were on the Joan Rivers show, but I
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
know
I remember
until many
watching that.
years later when I saw it on YouTube. But yeah, they did Could You Be the One, and the what was the other song they did? I'll know it when I see it. She's a Woman Now, He's a Man, they did that night too. Yeah, but I didn't know it back then. I mean, that was back in like 87. So yeah, so I came into the band a little bit late, but I wish I got into them earlier. My cousin Lisa liked Husker Du a lot. I gotta ask her if she saw them though, because she's 8 years older than me and she's been hitting shows at the 930 Club forever. So I'm gathering she had to have seen them. I'll have to send her a text and see.
Yeah, see, she's got some good stories.
Right. I'm sure she will. But we're going to talk about this album today, talk about what we love about the album, what we're not so into. This again this was put together by their sound man, Lou Giordano. Here's a question I have for you, Matt. And this isn't something I really looked into. This came out in April of 94. My opinion is Warner Brothers put this out because this is when pop punk started to really gain some traction. Because Green Day were getting some momentum and Offspring were getting some momentum. They didn't quite hit big until later on that year. Do you think this was in response to what they saw coming around the corner?
From a commercial sense, yeah, I'm sure that was going on because there were, bands who were becoming popular who cited Husker Du as influences, and sort of Nirvana and Pixies. Um, but my understanding, and this is probably the Bob Mould telling of the story, is
Okay.
partly so they had originally the deal was that Bob Mould and Grant Hart, who were the two songwriters, got production credits on their records, and from a royalty standpoint, not so much from a credit standpoint, but from a royalty standpoint. And they were 60-40 for in Bob's favor, given he was a bit more prolific and was doing some of the business stuff. And the two of them had agreed to that. And then post breakup, Greg and Grant and a lawyer had come back and wanted to renegotiate that. And Bob's lawyer was saying, do you really want to fight this thing and just walk away from it, which is what he did. And so they rewrote the agreement so that it was a three-way split on the production royalties.
Okay.
And so therefore, in some ways, both uh, Grant had to got the opportunity to claw back a little, and Greg got to claw back a lot, basically. And so it froze the royalties that Bob Mould was getting out of the anything that the back catalog. And so then they were looking to maximize what new sales coming in, and they had those recordings, and so thought that that would be commercially viable, and then predominantly the royalties there were going to Greg first, and then to Grant, and then only if there was more after everyone had equaled out would things
Mhm.
go to Bob Mould. So he had nothing to do with the thing. He when they sent him the final version for approval, and he had his guitar tech. He said he didn't want to listen to it. He said he went to his guitar. You like Husker Du, right? You listened to it, and he listened to it and said, it's killer, and said, all right, and he blessed it, but had nothing to do with it
Hmm.
whatsoever.
Wow, I never knew that. Interesting story. Another thing I was thinking too is Copper Blue came out before this. It would have been around 92, I believe. And that the success of that album. Oh, there you go. Oh, is that the cassette?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
sweet.
and I've got Living End on cassette as well. So
Oh, nice.
that's what I was buying those at the time as they were coming out. This was in the, not finding things on vinyl anymore days, and I wasn't in on CDs at that point. So
Okay.
time period, I've got more things are on cassette than anything else. Most of the Husker Du stuff for me, which will do some
There you go.
is all on vinyl, which is how I originally got it.
Nice. And now the the Sugar albums, I got them, but I only got them much, much later. I got them during the pandemic, actually. Well, the first two. Well, Copper Blue and File Under Easy Listening. Beaster only picked up recently because down in the near future, I'm going to be doing a show about sugar.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so keep your eye on out. Keep your eye out for that. Hello, Davy Cretin. So now you know who I'm doing it. So
Nice.
yeah. So with this album, what I like about this is, well, for one thing, the drum sound is much more full because as much as I love SST, the drums were really tinny on those albums. And here you really hear Grant playing up a storm and throwing in all those great fills on here.
Yeah, I completely agree. The drum sound is probably one of the biggest sonic differences between the studio versions for sure. There's a yeah, much more powerful. It was for most of the stuff was pretty, I guess, thin
Then, yeah.
sounding, right? And so especially like on Ice Cold Ice and She Floated Away, it actually it makes a much heavier sound to it, less um, just less of that kind of thin tinny drum sound.
And interestingly, those were on Warehouse where they had a bigger budget, and this drum still sounded a little tinny. But yeah, here the drums are really, really full. And when I listen to the vocals, Grant sounds like he did on all the albums. If anything, he sounds better. Bob sounds angry and a little rough at times. I mean, he's showing a lot of fire, which is great. But I think his vocals on a lot of these songs are rough. Where Grant, you know, it's almost like listening to the record. If anything, there's just more passion to his vocals than they were on the records.
Yeah, there's also more like he's got that heavier delay on his vocal sound in the on the live one, so it's a I think he sounds a little fuller
Yes.
as well on there. But they've got, they've all to me it just put even more emphasis on what was a positive attribute of the band, which was sort of the sweet and sour of the two vocalists. He was more Grant was more melodic, Bob was harsher anyways, and so
Yep.
it actually made that difference even more. And it's really interesting because like they there's a lot where they're singing at the same time, but it's not like tightly harmonized parts. It's they're each singing and it's the same words, but almost like with their own distinct performances. And they always had just a very unique blend between those two vocals, even though it's not like a tight harmony blend. It's
Right.
two very different sounds. They're not, it's not, the timing's not the exact same and everything, but it had a very unique and a very emotive, emotional appeal, the way that their voices blend. And I think that that's if anything, just even more noticeable on this live record.
I would agree with that. What are some of the highlights of here for this album for you, song wise?
Um, well, if it's all right, but maybe just before that, because I think maybe this will explain maybe some of why I like some of that is so sort of some personal stuff with the with this record for me.
Sure.
So I did get to so they Warehouse Songs and Stories comes out in the beginning of '87,
Okay.
and then they do the spring tour, and that's where they're they're actually playing bigger venues. They're doing for the first time kind of a full stage show, so that they've actually got some stuff on stage. They got some visuals for it, and I did get to see them then. So they played the Orpheum Theater in Boston,
Nice.
saw them on that show, and throughout that whole tour, they're playing Warehouse Songs and Stories in its entirety, and then doing sort of an encore set of previous songs. So they were all in on that. And then in the late summer, they're trying to record, do rehearsals to make another album, and it's not getting anywhere. And the songs that each are bringing. So again, Grant and Bob are the two songwriters, but they work pretty independently on the songwriting parts, and then bring them to the band. No, neither is getting a reaction back on what they're bringing, and
Oh,
they're struggling to find a cohesive approach and sound to it. So then they go out on this pretty short fall tour. And earlier, like there's a lot of tour, there's so much turmoil going on. So earlier, right as they were starting the Warehouse tour, their manager, Dave Savoy, had committed suicide. So there had been a lot of tragedy in this band. Some substance stuff going on in the band. And but they go do this tour, and they're playing what I thought were the venues that they had kind of come up on, right?
okay.
And so I saw the I went to the living room show. So I saw one of the shows that this two of the songs were recorded at. So in Providence, Rhode Island,
Okay.
the living room shows, and it was really um, so the set, so first of all, the set itself, they were varying the sets. They're kind of going back to the way they used to do things, which we could talk about a little bit, how they kind of constructed sets out of packets of songs, 3 or 4 song packets, which is what they had done in the past up until the Warehouse uh, main tour. And they dug deep. There's some pretty obscure tunes on the album, and they were again kind of doing different set lists each night. So that show was amazing, right? So it was a overall much stronger show than the core warehouse tour show that I had seen back in the spring, just because it was the club was smaller, and it was the crowd was just it was not a seat. The other one was a seated theater. This was just a punk rock club, and then the set list was just amazing, right? And really diverse, and they were so intense, and it was relentless. And first of all, I love that that the Living End is a document of that tour, because it's really probably the last time that they were great. And it's better than what they were before. It was comparable, from what I understand, probably to the shows around the New Day Rising and Flip Your Wig era, which were probably the other peak time period for live shows for the band. So was really thrilled with that. And anyways, at the end of the show, Greg Norton sat in a stool at the exit, and he shook everybody's hand out as you're going out the door. And it was not long after that they broke up. And so in my head, I always thought that they knew that they were done, and that they were doing this one last little tour to go back to the roots and everything and go out. And then this is Greg saying goodbye. Um, Later, I learned that's not true. So that's not they did not know that they were breaking up. They viewed this part of the tour, they called it their victory lap tour, which was just sort of kind of after you've done one cycle on an album, and now it's starting to catch on. You're trying to clean up a bit more, and they went back to playing the older songs for their own pleasure of doing it, and that they were kind of frustrated with trying to keep pushing what they called a lukewarm record and playing the whole thing. It's like, let's go back. So it was more of just their own current artistic situation, and they weren't planning to break up. They then in December do another short tour, this time in the Midwest, and that's disastrous. And then they cancel the last show. They don't complete it, and they end up breaking up. So my head canon was different than the reality of it, but that it sort of is very personal to me. So a lot of the songs that I like the most on there are the songs that I like the most, right? They do a great job on everything. So it's not like, oh, they did, a terrible job on this one, but they did a great job on this one. It's really just around what are the songs that I personally like the best. And my favorite album of theirs, we'll start doing some of the show and tell stuff. So is New Day Rising, and they do 6 songs
Yes.
from New Day Rising, right? So they do the song New Day Rising. They do Girl Who Lives on Heaven's Hill, Terms of Psychic Warfare, Powerline, Books About UFOs, and Celebrated Summer. And those are some of my favorite songs. So, really love those, and to have live versions of them was very, very exciting to me. So I guess those would be the first that I would highlight. How about you, John? What are some of your faves?
Well, I like New Day Rising quite a bit. I'm actually more into Zen Arcade because it was my first, and Warehouse. It truthfully, it's because I had the most time with them. Yeah, I'll bring mine out as well. I've had the most time with those albums, and these are both double albums, but they're two excellent double albums in my opinion, because you got great songs from both Bob and Grant. There's enough stuff on here. They mix it up here to make it interesting. Now, as far as my favorite songs on this album, yeah, a lot of them would definitely be from Warehouse. And this album right here. And there you go. There's the original vinyl. I love She's Floating Away. I think the version of that on here is outstanding.
Yeah.
Wicked. I love that. I love Friend You've Got to Fall, I like a lot. Let me just get the cover back out here. Stand in the Rain, I love. There's Ice Cold
Ice Cold
Ice.
Ice is so good on that.
Ice
Yeah,
Cold
it's
Ice is
heavier
fantastic.
and the back and forth on the two vocals, right? So you get the um, Bob singing the basically the verse lines, but in between each line, right, you get the Ice Cold Ice from Grant that's so melodic. It's such a cool tune.
And then when they sing together before they go into the chorus, it sounds wicked.
Yeah.
Well, those I really, really enjoy. Of course, the songs from New Day Rising, I really like. Some of the songs from Everything Falls Apart, I didn't know before we we decided to do this album. There it is. Now that I don't own. I do own Metal Circus since we spoke last when we did Blackfoot, because I said I was going to pick up some more, and I was
Oh,
able
nice.
and I was able to find Metal Circus, and interestingly, I oh wait, I grabbed the wrong thing here. Interestingly, I was able to find it at a local music store. Well, one
Oh,
it's
nice.
yeah, I found it in Quakertown. So I was able to pick this up new, which surprised me. I thought I'd have to go get this online, but no, they actually had a brand new one there, which was awesome. They got a lot of great used CDs at that Record Revival in Quakertown as well. But my favorite songs are the ones from Warehouse, the songs from Flip Your Wig. I really, really dig those as well.
Yeah, so Flip Your Wig, you've got Divide and Conquer, and Keep Hanging
Keep
On.
hanging on. Divide and Conquer is fantastic, and Keep Hanging On I like a lot. So those are some of my favorites, and I wish there was more from Zen Arcade, but when
Hey, we
you
only get one, right? So I was going to ask you if you were disappointed by that. I
I
was.
am I am, but once you tell the story, once you told me the story here, and when I looked on Setlist FM, I realized, yeah, they weren't hitting this album hard on that tour in October.
Yeah, not too much. Although when at the living room show, so they played Chartered Trips and they played Never Talking to You Again. So I got to see both of those, which was really cool. And on the first leg um, of the Warehouse, when they did that sort of set afterwards, on the show that I saw, they did Pink Turns to Blue from Zen Arcade. So they were they in that year they were playing more, but um, I don't think that album is as I think the critics and fans liked it a little bit more than the band. I think the band felt like they did progress, um, starting with New Day Rising, and I know Bob Mould says Flip Your Wig is his favorite, and it's such a it is a young person's album, right? Thematically, and it's about a young person.
Right,
And I think probably as they matured and as they matured as songwriters and as the topics that they were singing about matured, that maybe the songs weren't as relatable to the songwriters as they were originally. Even though it's such a short period of time, they were so
right,
prolific. I mean, it's such a short period of time. I mean, you're talking only the 3 years later,
right.
but
Yeah,
it's
84.
crazy how much they put out and evolved in such a short period of time.
Yeah, and in a time where we were away from that two albums a year thing,
They
they
weren't.
they did in '85 with New Day Rising and Flip Your Wig.
Yep, two in one year.
Yeah, and two outstanding albums too.
And they talked about how when they were touring with those, like they would go out on tour, like when they were touring New Day Rising, they're already playing songs from Flip Your Wig, right? Like
Okay,
they were just they were working them out on the road and stuff, and again, just so prolific. They were so hot.
definitely. When you were mentioning what songs that you caught them playing there in Providence, those were ones that I had written down. I wish they played these. Yeah,
Okay, okay.
those are my those were my favorite tracks from Zen Arcade. Never Talking to You Again, Charter Trips. I only saw Bob Mould once.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was solo electric,
Very cool.
and he's been doing that a lot. I know he's going out with Sugar later on this year, but I saw him in 2020, right before they shut everything down, and they he hit a lot of songs from Husker Du that night. I guess he always plays Charter Trips these days, and I Apologize. He plays a lot now. I would have liked a version of I Apologize on here too, but we got 6 songs from New Day Rising, and I mean, they're all killer. But yeah, I would have loved Turn on the News, Pink Turns to Blue. Yeah,
Yeah.
that disappointed me a little bit, but then when I looked at some of the set lists from this tour, it didn't seem like they'd ever do more than 3 songs off of Zen Arcade. But they were still hitting Warehouse pretty hard. They were still doing 8 or 9 tracks a night.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And it's interesting that they didn't do too much for Flip Your Wig. Um, we just talked about like how there was just two there. And again, on the show that I saw, they did three other ones. So they did Flexible Flyer, they did Find Me, and they did Green Eyes. So those were some things again on that tour that could have been included, which would have been cool. I mean, again, not complaining necessarily what was on there was bad or anything like that, but there were some other ones. And from Candy Apple Gray, on the show I saw, they did Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely, which again wasn't on the live one, which was closer to a hit. So that a little surprising they wouldn't have included one there. But you don't know how the live recordings were for each of these. I mean, you've just been picking the ones that came out the best.
That's what I was thinking too when I was listening to this album and thinking about what I would put in. Well, maybe they're just putting in the stuff that sounds the best here, because Candy Apple Gray, they do Hardly Getting Over It, and that's one of the songs on there I'm not too into, because I know it was a change in direction. They wanted to do something slower and longer and see how it worked out, but I was never into that song. I would have put Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely, or Sorry Somehow, or Eiffel Tower High, like any of those. And No Promise Have I Made, then that's like a straight up piano ballad. So yeah, they
Yeah,
were definitely, well, Bob Mould was definitely expanding his horizons at this point.
yeah, and like Too Far Down is again not probably for a Husker Du live show, right? Like those would be all great ones for a Bob Mould solo
Correct.
show, but maybe not. They were intentionally took some stuff from the Ramones about that with the surgical efficiency, right, of just coming in and just hitting you, doing those 3 or 4 song packets without any breaks in between them, and little to no talking in between songs, and just keeping it you know high intensity the whole time.
Yes,
That was the Husker Du experience. And those later albums, there's definitely a lot more moods than that, but wouldn't necessarily have fit the live experience of the band.
exactly. And it was interesting. They were doing more of that on Candy Apple Gray, but then when they go back to doing a double album again, there's nothing quite that slow. There's different kind of moods on here and different tempos and all that, but some of the songs are just heavier. Another one of my favorite songs by Husker Du, which I will love to have heard on here, would have been Bed of Nails. I think Bed of Nails is wicked.
Yeah,
To me,
yeah.
that's near heavy metal. I mean, and Bob sounds fantastic on that. There, he sounds so emotional in his vocals.
Very, yeah, I was just gonna say emotional. Yeah.
Yeah, like something like that I would have loved on there. And Visionary is another one I've always loved. Yeah, I really love the Bob songs on Warehouse. Although, yeah, She Float Away is fantastic too.
Yeah.
Definitely. So you saw them So you saw him twice on the Warehouse tour.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, I ended up saw him twice in '87. On the first one, it was it was fun. They did a in-store record signing
Oh, okay.
at Newbury Comics in Boston, and so I did get to meet them and
Nice.
my one other. So I bought this at that time because I needed something to get signed that I didn't already have at the store. So this is the autographs from that. So this was the Don't Want to Know If You're Lonely kind of EP. So it's got All Work and No Play and a live version of Helter Skelter on the back of the EP. So that was fun. And on that first leg of the tour, it was very professional tour, right? Again, they've got the stage set up and everything. They're playing seated theaters, and they actually did a program. So I also got the
Oh, nice.
Warehouse Songs and Story program, which has some very cool photos in it.
Ah,
And then
very
it's
well.
almost the text is each band member I think wrote stuff, but it was more like poetry, semi-prose type stuff. It wasn't like about the band. It was almost like song lyrics that weren't kind of stuff. So this was a pretty cool, just different kind of thing to have. Um, but again, it was like more like that's not a real punk rock thing. To have your tour program from your theater show wasn't that kind of a punk rock thing, which showed how that things have been maturing for them. As they were on their second album on a major label on Warner, and they were slowly moving up. They didn't sell too many albums as it turned out, but they were moving up the food chain for sure. And what could have been.
Well, yeah, they're playing the Orpheum. That's a I'm gathering 1,500, 2,000 seater at that point.
Yeah, that's probably right. That sounds right to me. Probably 2,000
Okay.
people. So yeah,
They were
seated
de
theater.
they were definitely on their way, and they're making appearances on talk shows now. So the
Yeah, yeah. So they're getting the publicity. The PR folks from the label are helping them out. But I mean, for all the personal stuff going on, like this band was not going to continue. There was,
yes,
um, it, and in some ways, right, when you look in retrospect, the catalog is unblemished, right? Um, it ended before it ever went downhill.
that's true.
Uh, so as a fan of the band, there's no part that you look back on with any sort of you know, anything other than love, right? Like the they had their run, um, a very intense, very prolific run, not a lot of years, but you look back on it and there's no warts in the catalog, and they were very innovative at different times, right? They start out being innovative from just a punk rock standpoint, right? Like I
Right.
mean, they were legit one of the fastest bands on the planet at that point, and then just seeing the way that they matured and became this band who's was ahead of their time, right? They were too early to really
Or
benefit from the alternative rock, college rock, whatever you want to call it, that happened in the 90s, early 90s, right? Like they were the grandfathers of that, and didn't get the benefit other than tangentially. Like Sugar got the benefit from it, and that Sugar outsold Husker Du. But the catalog you can't touch.
I agree with that. As much as I like sugar, yeah, Husker Du's catalogs is very, very, very strong. I mean, Candy Apple Grapes, they slipped a little bit, but not much.
Yeah, and it's the songwriting overall. It's really good, and it's better recorded than probably most of their other stuff. That might be in some ways their best sounding album
Yes, I would agree. Yeah, I would agree with that. I
from
think
a pure platonic sonic standpoint, um, and has some super super good peaks, and it I really like those emotional, more ballady Bob Mould stuff, right? And that other parts of his career and his solo career, he was able to lean into that, and he was, really again kind of maturing as a songwriter. So although those were a little less traditional Husker Du-ish, whatever that means, um, they're very good songs on that record too.
What do you think of the songs from their early days on this album? Such as, or From the Gut and Target.
Yeah,
Don't
so yeah, so they do both of those from
Everything
Everything
falls
Falls
apart.
Apart. Um, and from the gut is from the show I saw. So I saw that version
Oh, nice.
being done. So that was super cool, and it was great. They're intense, all right, because that's is still in the intense period, the most intense period of the band, and I think they sound great. They do um, In a Free Land, right? So which was
Yes,
just that was a single, an
that was just a
82
single.
single um, on there. That sounds great. And and then data control, right? So that um, from this one, and that was also recorded at the show I was at. So it was From the Gut and Data Control were the two that
Nice.
were recorded from the show I was at. So and just my experience, I can't listen to it objectively, right? Because especially I was there for those two songs, and those and the pit was really intense on those ones, right? Like I was right in there, and it was uh, it, it 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 was such a visceral experience that I cannot give you an objective opinion on how they did those because when I listen to them, I'm back there, I'm back in the pit, and seeing one of my favorite bands at a in a small club with a bunch of lunatic fans. It was great.
That's awesome. Did you get into Bob or Grant's solo stuff at all?
Yeah, not as much. I'll do some more show and tell.
Or
I I loved Workbook, so that was the
I do
first
too.
solo one. So um, that's actually one of the first rock reviews I ever wrote was
Oh,
for that. So I took so that's 89, and I was taking a reviewing the arts class with Bill Marks, who is the theater critic for the Boston Phoenix at the time. And so those 89, summer of 89 records are very ingrained because those were the ones I was writing reviews for. So that one, but anyways, I love, love, love that record. I never really warmed to Sugar.
okay.
It's objectively very good, but it just never sort of sunk its teeth into me. Um, and then, you know, Grant Hart, he didn't have nearly as, well, he wasn't as consistently active for a variety of reasons. And of course, we lost him. Um, just probably wasn't as um, focused.
Right.
So but, 2541, like that was a song he brought to Husker Du. And that was the first in the Bob Mould autobiography, he talks about how that was he feels some regret for that because he really kind of shot it down, didn't see the merit of the song, and that was kind of the first time that he'd really done that, and realized that he probably hurt Grant, and then realized later that the song did have merit, and that may have been some of the some of the initial fissures in the in their partnership. Um, And so, he did other stuff, right? So he did some solo stuff. He had Nova Mob, um, and I find value in little bits of value in all of those things from both of them, but nothing really sunk its teeth into me. Workbook being the closest. I do really love that album. That's probably the only one that has anything close to a piece of the same level of piece of heart of my heart that any of the Husker Du albums have.
Yeah. I love Blue Hearts from 2020.
Yeah, yeah, and it's
That
so hard, right? Like when you start getting to the more recent stuff, right? It's so you have less time with them
right.
with albums, right? So you know they'll come over time, and as we get older, it's harder for any album to be as meaningful as an album that you heard at younger periods of your life. It can happen, but it takes a lot more. There's there you're a more empty vessel
Yes.
when you're younger,
That's true.
and the hard drive is pretty full at this point, so it's a little bit tougher for things. But so like something like that, I haven't lived enough with it, right, to really give it the same. If that had come out then, right, it would probably already have been at that same level.
Yes, exactly. Yes, I really enjoy that. And Here We Go Crazy that came out last year. That's very good too. They're both really tight albums, but they have a lot of the same Husker Du spirit, I believe, which is why I really enjoy them.
Yeah, and you know he's he's um, lived in such a way that been able to continue to improve,
Yes,
right? So I think now you get an older songwriter, an older great songwriter, right? There's
absolutely.
different things to say because he's not a young songwriter, but still, but you know, has continued to evolve his craft.
Absolutely. So Matt, how would you rank the Living End on a scale of 1 to 10?
Oh, geez, that's a I should have prepared to how to think about that. So, um, I mean, within the Husker Du catalog, right? Like is one way to look at it, right? And for me, if you're looking at it that way, I actually would not put it at the top, right? So
I wouldn't either.
I think you're going to get more out of albums like for me personally, just you know, Zen Arcade, for sure. I think you're going to get more out of um, New Day Rising for sure, and probably everything in that kind of period. So it's, you know, probably middle to low of the pack, right? For it, there's more cohesiveness to the individual studio albums, and you know, for some of the reasons we talked about, you're missing out on some of the truly best songs in the catalog. Which, if you go to those individual records, you're going to get all the best ones. So you know, from within the Husker Du catalog, where you know you probably only have a range from 6 to 10 because everything's so good, right? It's probably a 7. But the as a just a you know, for me again, it's very hard to look at it objectively. It is as a artifact from a band that's very important to me and that I would argue is a very important band. Um, it's a 9 or a 10, right? Because it's such an important document of that band in a way that doesn't really exist in any other form, and it was a important and ultimately tragic, really tragic story overall, right? There's true tragedy in that. I don't just mean it from a music, you know, over exaggerating as a fan, right? Like there's true tragedy in there in that band's life cycle, and I'm very thankful that this got released, even if the for its release were definitely not altruistic in any uh, in any form or fashion or artistic. But so thankful that it exists. So I put it as a 9 and 10, 10 in terms of my appreciation for it. How about you, John? How would you rate it?
I'm gonna go with an 8 because even though I nitpick, oh, we only got one song from Zen Arcade, we only got one from Candy Apple Gray. I like how they went back to their early days and put those songs on there. I think they fit in here with everything else, and I think those tracks are very strong. New Day Rising, yeah, it's near perfect record. It was an album I only got into more recently, and if I had the years with it that you have, I'd say it's a 10 record. To me, Zen Arcade and Warehouse are the 10 records because I only have more experience with them. But you got a lot from Warehouse on here. I am a little nitpicky on Bob's vocals, but it's on the more melodic stuff, on the songs that hit harder or more punk. I think he sounds fine. The interplay is very good. I like the way that Greg's recorded. He's a very busy bass player. And I like how Grant
You're actually going to hear it a little better than on some of the studio, even I would say on this one. It's interesting. That's a good point.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, he's hard to pick up when those slashing guitars from Bob kick in on those studio albums. So I like that we got a lot of variety here. Yes, I would like more Zen Arcade, no doubt about it, because it's my favorite. It's one of my 10 favorite double albums that I own. And Warehouse probably be like top 15. That's how much I
Yeah.
love those records. But there's still so much here to enjoy, even though it's from a lot of different venues. It still sounds cohesive. The only time I don't think it sounds cohesive is on What's Going On, because the vocals are very echoed.
Yeah, that one they really, someone must have hit the button a little.
Right. Yeah,
No.
that doesn't sound good at all. Like that's like a skip for me. But on Zen Arcade, I love it.
Yeah.
As it is though, I give it an 8. But it would be one of the albums I'd rank a little lower, but again, I still think it's a great document of their live show. We got near the end of their live show. So this is as tight as they were probably going to be, because they already had that experience behind them and hundreds of shows. So me, it's just minor things and just song selection. Out that side of that, I think this is a very good live album that doesn't get enough love or recognition. And this is Husker Du, The Living End. For those of you who have joined us today, thank you so much for joining us. What do you think of this live album? And what do you think of Husker Du's music? What are your favorite albums? What are your favorite songs by Husker Du? Did you only get into Husker Du later, like I did? Did you get into them when Sugar came out and they were a more popular band there in the 1990s? Are you a fan of Grant Hart's solo catalog or Bob Mould's solo catalog? He has a ton of albums. He's still putting out great ones, just like he did last year. But here we go crazy. Please let us know in the comments what you think of Husker Du, The Living End. Matt, thank you so much for joining me today. This was a long time coming. We've been wanting to talk Husker Du for a few years, and we got to do it today.
I'm glad we finally got to do it. Always love talking to you, John. Thanks for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Matt. So, what do you have lined up on your appearances on the Contrarians? I see you've been more active there lately.
Yeah, there's been some topics that I wanted to weigh in on. So we had recently done the top 10 Blue Oyster Cult songs, and I did I kind of did not follow directions, went off the board a little bit for how I approached that, doing my top 10 favorite Blue Oyster Cult songwriting pairs and what my favorite song from each of those was.
I
So I had
love
some
the
fun
way
with that.
you approached it.
Yeah, I didn't want it to just be because otherwise everyone's going to talk about similar songs and things like that, right?
Right.
So I think that just to have a little different, and it is kind of a unique thing about their use of outside songwriters and collaborating with outside songwriters is different than other bands, and it's an important part of the Blue Oyster Cult story. So I thought that was just a little more fun and gave me an opportunity to talk about some songs that I normally wouldn't get a chance to talk to, or I thought that wouldn't get picked by other people. And like a top 10 list is um it's impossible to invert a lot of these things.
Oh, well, a catalog like that. I mean, just there's different eras and there's greatness in every era, in my opinion. Even those latter day albums that didn't sell at all, there's a lot of great tracks on those.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you could pick things from throughout the catalog, and they've been around a while, right? So there's a lot to choose from. So yeah, so I thought that was fun episode to do. And then I've got my weekly Critical Hit Parader newsletter. So that keeps chugging along. We just hit the 3 year anniversary of that
Excellent.
newsletter. So if you have any interest in the intersection of music and role-playing games, so things like music that's influenced by fantasy and science fiction authors, or fantasy and sci-fi themed album covers, and things like that, then you might like the Critical Hit Parader newsletter, which is free. So if you're interested in that, Google it, and I'd love to have you sign up.
Excellent. I will put the link in the description for this video for Critical Hit Parader. Thank you, Matt, for joining me. Thank you all so much for watching. Do what you love. We'll talk to you soon.